You have some time to look at questions 1 to 3.
That'll be $23. Right, there's your change. Have a nice trip. Oh, I'll just get your bags out of the boot.
Thank you very much. Now, George, let's find the check-in desk.
Yes, but with all the changes they have made here at the airport, I'm not sure where the check-in desk is.
I know, it's strange, isn't it? Why don't we ask for help?
Good idea. What about that man sitting down over there?
Which one? The one with the hat on and in the trolley?
No, the one with the uniform behind the table. I'll ask him. Excuse me, could you tell me where the check-in desk for France Air is, please? Oh, let me think. The best way to get there would be to turn left at the end there, where the cafe is, and then go straight ahead until you're opposite the departure gates entrance. Oh, no, sorry. It might be quicker to turn right as soon as you get past the cafe, and keep going along the corridor until you come to the sliding doors at the end. On the left. Yes, that's it. All the check-in counters are in a hall there. I'm pretty sure France Air is directly to your left as you walk in the hall.
Thanks a lot. So, it's the left past the cafe and then right opposite...
The bookshop. You can't miss it. Come on then, Lisa. We don't want to be late, and I want some time to get a cup of coffee and look around the bookshop.
OK, George, but I want to go to the restroom first. I'll meet you at the check-in desk.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 4 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 4 to 10.
Good morning. Can I help you?
Yes, I would like to check in for flight FA492.
Very good. Can I have your ticket and passport, please?
Oh, yes, here you are.
OK, thanks. If you could just put your suitcase on the scales.
Oh, I have this extra box that I want to take as well.
OK, well, that's extra luggage, so I'll have to get you to fill out an excess baggage declaration certificate. It'll cost extra, I'm afraid. Let me see. $40 exactly, if the total value of your contents is under $400.
Oh, well, what's the form for?
It's just a form you have to fill out so that if there are any problems, we'll know where you are and how to contact you. So, if you can give me a few details, I'll key in the information. OK then, your passport says your name is Lavier. Is that right?
Yes, George Lavier.
George, Lavilliers. Good. Now, nationality. French? No, wait a minute. It's a Swiss passport.
Well, yes, I live in France, but I was born in Switzerland.
Swiss. Very good. Flight number FA492. Destination is...
Paris.
Are you connecting with any other flight in Paris, or will you be staying there?
I'm spending my vacation in Paris. Well, Sèvres, just outside Paris.
OK. So what's the phone number there?
Let me think. The country code for France is 33, and the number is 198614537.
Right, so that's 331-9861-4537.
Yes, that's it.
And can you tell me briefly what you have in the box?
Well, there are some books, just university textbooks from last semester, some clothes, and, my computer disks.
OK, thank you. And what would be the approximate value of the contents?
Quite a bit, actually. About $150.
That's all. There's your receipt for the box, your passport and ticket, and here is your boarding pass. Gate 7. You can board the plane in about 35 minutes. Have a nice flight.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2. Mr. Jackson, who feels that he is physically unfit, is consulting with his doctor about his health condition.
First, look at questions 11 to 14. Listen carefully.
Well, Mr. Jackson, the first and important thing I have to tell you is that there is really nothing seriously wrong with you. Physically, that is. My very thorough re-examination and the analyst's report show that basically you are very fit. Yes, very fit.
So, why is it, Doctor, that I'm always so nervy, tense, ready to jump on anybody? My wife, children, colleagues.
I think your condition has a lot to do with, shall we call it, way of life, habits?
Way of life? Habits?
Yes. Now tell me, Mr. Jackson, you smoke, don't you?
Yes, I'm afraid I do, Doctor.
And rather heavily, I imagine.
Well, yes. I smoke, about 40, 50 a day, I suppose.
You should do your best to stop, you know.
Yes, I see. But, it won't be the first time. I've tried to give up smoking several times, but it's no good.
You see, 50 a day is overdoing it, you must admit. You must cut down at least that. Ah, yes. I know that when you're feeling tense, you probably feel that a cigarette relaxes you. But in the long run, I do advise you to make a real effort to quit smoking.
Of course, but, it's easy to say give it up or cut it down, but, you know.
Well, in my opinion, you have no choice. Either you make a real effort or there's no real chance of your feeling better. You see, well, obviously, I could prescribe some kind of tranquilizer, but would that help? I'd prefer, and I'm quite sure you'll agree, I'd prefer to see you really back to normal, not just seemingly so. And that's my reason for asking you several more questions about your other habits.
Right.
Before the broadcast continues, look at questions 15 to 20. You will now listen to the second part of the talk.
Your eating habits, for example. What do you eat normally, during a normal day?
Yes, I'm a good eater. Yes, I'd say I'm a good eater. Now let's see. Up at 8 in the morning, and my wife has a good breakfast ready.
A good breakfast?
The usual. A cereal followed by bacon and eggs with fried bread and perhaps a tomato or two. Then toast and marmalade, all washed down with a couple of cups of tea. Yes, I really enjoy my breakfast.
Yes, I can see you do, but I'd advise you to eat rather less. We'll come to that later. Go on.
Then lunch. No, first brunch. A cup of coffee and a bun at 11. Lunch has to be quick, because there's so much to do in the office about that time, so I have a pint and a sandwich in the pub. All very hurried.
Try to be in less of a hurry.
But I make up for it in the evening. I get home at about 7. Dinner's around about 8. Yes, my wife's an excellent cook. Excellent. It's usually some meat dish, and we like spaghetti as a first course. Spaghetti, a meat dish, cheese, sweet. But then, at the end of the day, shall we say, then I begin to feel on edge again. Most evenings after dinner we read or watch TV, but I get this terrible feeling of tension.
Well, I'm sorry to have to say this because you obviously enjoy your food, but I really do recommend that you eat less, and secondly, that you eat more healthily. Instead of having that enormous breakfast, for example, try to be content with fruit juice and some cereal.
I see, but
11 says right. Well, that's all right, but lunch should be more leisurely. Remember, your health is at stake, not your job. As for dinner, I'd advise you to eat a soup, perhaps, with a salad. A salad followed by some fruit.
But my wife's cooking
is superb, granted. And she probably enjoys preparing delicious meals for you. If you like, I'll have a word with your wife.
No, that won't be necessary. Thanks just the same, Doctor, but no.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3. Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a tutor and 2 students discussing the best ways to study.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Well, how are you both settling in?
Fine.
Yes, no problems. So far, anyway.
Good. Remember that as your personal tutor, I'm here to help you if you do have any difficulties. Now, as you know, lectures start on Monday, so I thought we'd look at a few ways of making the most of them, especially in terms of the notes you take. Let's begin by thinking about what you can do before you even go to the lecture. Any ideas?
Make sure you're up to date with all the background reading, so you know plenty about the subject already.
Yes, that's essential. The lecturer will assume you have that knowledge. Anything else, Carlos?
Well, check what the topic's going to be. Of the lecture, that is.
I'd go a bit further than that and consider what the content may be. Then you could ask yourself some questions that you want answering, and listen out for the relevant information during the lecture.
Okay.
Now that brings us to the lecture itself and the actual business of writing notes. But there's a lot to deal with there, so we'll come back to that later. What I'd like to do for the moment is continue with the process of note-taking and move on to the next stage. Any suggestions for what that might be?
When the lecture is over, you mean?
Yes, once you're able to sit down somewhere quiet with your notes.
Read them?
More than that, you need to make sure they'll still make sense to you weeks, months later.
Edit them?
Yes, that's what's needed. It's well worth spending a few minutes on it. Any missing words, anything difficult to read, things you didn't have time to jot down, now is the time to do so, while everything's still fresh in your mind.
Right. And after that, when's the best time to revise them?
When do you think, Carlos?
I'd say just before the next lecture, in the same subject.
Precisely. That's a vital time to look at them again, for obvious reasons. But it's definitely not the only time. When should you revise them again?
A month later, maybe?
Sooner, and much more often than that. I'd recommend you look at them again once a week. That's why it's so important they're complete and easy to follow.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Right. Let's go back to note-taking and begin with the basics before the lecture has even started. What should you do when you walk into the room?
Get a good seat, at the front if you can, where you can hear clearly and avoid distractions.
Yes, though obviously others will have had the same idea, so it's as well to get there a bit early. So, when the lecture's underway and you're busy jotting things down, what should you try to ensure?
That you're getting all the main points.
And what if you don't catch something you know must be important?
I'd leave a space. Then I could check it later, perhaps by asking a question at the end and fill it in afterwards.
That's an excellent way to deal with it, yes. And there's something else I'd like to mention here. Talking about going through notes afterwards, it's absolutely vital that what you write is legible for one very good reason. It saves time. You'll waste many hours during the course if your revision is held up because you can't read what you've written. Okay, what else can we do to make listening and note-taking more efficient?
Well, I always listen out for signpost words.
Sorry, what are they?
They're the ones lecturers use to say where they're going. A bit like a signpost at a road junction, I suppose. Things like, the first reason is, however, to sum up, and so on.
Yes, they can tell you when something important is coming, and help you organize your notes, too. Is there anything else you can add, Carlos?
There's something I think's very useful, but it's later, after the lecture is finished.
That's fine. Go on.
Well, what I do is go through what I've written down, summing up the main points in a few words in the margin, on the left-hand side of the page. I try to use words that'll jog my memory, so that I can remember what everything's about when I look at them again.
Yes, that can work very well. What some people do to review their notes is cover up their full notes from the lecture, maybe with a piece of paper or a card, and concentrate just on what they've put in the margin, trying to recall the details. Then they move the cover down a little and check whether they were right.
Or you could put your main points on another piece of paper and clip them together. Instead of covering and uncovering, you just hold a page in each hand.
Sure. It's down to personal preference, really. Everyone has their own learning style.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You are going to hear a talk about the English policeman. As you listen, complete the notes below.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
The English policeman has several nicknames, but the most frequently used are Copper and Bobby. The first name comes from the verb to cop, which is also slang, meaning to take or to capture, and the second comes from the first name of Sir Robert Peel, the 19th century politician who was the founder of the police force as we know it today. An early nickname for the policeman was Peeler, but this one has died out. Whatever we may call them, the general opinion of the police seems to be a favourable one, except, of course, among the criminal part of the community, where the police are given more derogatory nicknames which originated in America, such as Fuzz or Pig. Visitors to England seem nearly always to be very impressed by the English police. It has, in fact, become a standing joke that the visitor to Britain, when asked for his views of the country, will always say, at some point or other, "I think your policemen are wonderful." Well, the British Bobby may not always be wonderful, but he is usually a very friendly and helpful sort of character. A music hall song of some years ago was called, "If you want to know the time, ask a policeman." Nowadays, most people own watches, but they still seem to find plenty of other questions to ask the policeman. In London, the policemen spend so much of their time directing visitors about the city that one wonders how they ever find time to do anything else. Two things are immediately noticeable to the stranger when he sees an English policeman for the first time. The first is that he does not carry a pistol, and the second is that he wears a very distinctive type of headgear, the policeman's helmet. His helmet, together with his height, enables an English policeman to be seen from a considerable distance, a fact that is not without its usefulness. From time to time it is suggested that the policeman should be given a pistol, and that his helmet should be taken from him. But both these suggestions are resisted by the majority of the public and the police themselves. However, the police have not resisted all changes. Radios, police cars, and even helicopters give them greater mobility now. The policeman's lot is not an enviable one, even in a country which prides itself on being reasonably law-abiding. But, on the whole, the English policeman fulfills his often thankless task with courtesy and good humour, and with an understanding of the fundamental fact that the police are the country's servants, and not its masters.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute